So today's episode, really excited for this one. We're going to learn a bit more about the perspective of a pro athlete and what we might be able to learn about being physically active from someone who's really good at it compared to us who are...
I mean, I know I'm trying, Ken, but I'm not a pro athlete just yet.
Not yet.
Oh, you didn't mean me?
Not yet, not ever.
All right, sorry.
And we're also going to talk a bit about what we can do to help young people develop active habits. So with us today, we've got professional rugby league player, played for Super League teams Wigan, Salford, Hull KR, Castleford and others. Wow. Now a behavioural therapist and mindset coach. We're delighted to welcome Lee Jewitt. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome, Lee. That was a good bio, that, wasn't it?
Was that better?
Yeah.
The last couple better. I did were rubbish.
No, that was spot on.
I think I might need to pep up my bio a little bit. I didn't. Was that all true?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Wicked. So welcome, Lee. Really, really happy to have you with us today. One thing that we like to do with all of our guests before we get into the meat of the podcast is talk about some success factors.
Yep.
So basically, this is what you'd like to leave today, having kind of experience from this podcast, and what you'd like to get from it. And I'll capture that, and at the end of the podcast, we'll have a look at it, and we'll decide between us whether we nailed it or not.
Yep. So definitely from this podcast would be getting out the similarities or the commonalities, should I say, within sport, professional athletes, and general public.
Okay,
you know,
cool.
There's a lot of common themes there. Dealing with emotions, and obviously everyone has to deal with them on a day-to-day basis, but having the tools to deal with them and overcoming adversity and problem solving, which within society these days, I think it's kind of just faded a little bit, fizzled out. Right. So yeah, they're definitely the three things I'd like to get out of this podcast.
Okay, wow.
As well as a good laugh with you two.
Oof.
That's pressure.
I won't have that one on. So let me just try to between sports and life. Right, okay, so brilliant. To paraphrase that, raise some awareness about the commonalities between professional athletes and sports and just kind of everyday life.
Yep.
Talk a little bit around some of the tools that we can have for kind of people's emotions, and also touch a little bit on how people can overcome adversity and your experiences with that. Perfect. And have a laugh. Let's see how we do.
We'll try on that bit. So let's just kick off. Lee, tell us a little bit about yourself, your career as a rugby player, and just a bit of background on who you are. And
so I started playing when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I used to go watching my uncle, and I know my grandma used to take me, so I was always around it, if you like, from a young age. And then I signed at Wigan when I was 14 years old. I signed there and then made my debut at 17 years old, which is pretty young, really. But in that, this is where I jump in and out of a lot of conversations. You know, in that, no one knew what extra training I was doing away. You know, because it's easy for people to look at you and go, "Oh, he's training with a team." But I was in a gym at one point with, at the time, obviously, I would have been 13, 14, 15 year old. I was in a gym with 30, 40, 50 year old men. You know, it was hardcore. You know, there was old school, if you like, and they were putting me through my paces. So when I look back now, I think, would I have made my debut at 17? Possibly not, if it weren't for them extras away from the game, what people don't see, which it's the effort really what goes underlined there. It gets dismissed quite a bit. So then I made my debut, and then I got told, basically, don't think you're good enough to carry on playing. This was the year after my debut. So, you know, as a young kid, you hear that, it's okay, what's next? But again, kept training, went to Salford, spent 7 years at Salford then, 7 good years, met my wife there, my children. So I had a great 7 years, and then similar thing happened when I left Salford. The coach came in, a new coach, and he said same thing. He went, "You're not in my plans." So again, it was a big chunk of my career, basically what I thought was progressing to come to a standstill. So that's where the adversity came in, and no club wanted me then. Right. That was the bottom. We just got a mortgage as well. No one wanted me. I remember coming home one day, and my wife literally just said to me, "Should we go to France? Should we go south of France and just play out there?" So, you know, that step into the unknown, I'm not so sure. Anyway, we did it. Went to France for 6 months, played out there, and absolutely absolutely loved it, you know. So when I look back from that side of it, my kids, two of my children come to France, brilliant, you know, the experience they had, they went to school there. Then when we came back, Castleford rung me when I was in France actually and said, we want to sign you, do you fancy coming back? So spoke to my children, they said, yeah, let's go back, Dad. So we went back, and then within 3 months I played at Wembley with Castleford.
Oh, wow.
So I went from not having a club to playing in France, which was a couple of standards down from what I was used to playing at Wembley, which is, I'm not so sure if you know rugby league as a kid, probably with any sport actually, to play at Wembley is like a dream. That's the pinnacle, definitely. For unless it's England and represent your country, that's the pinnacle with club sports. So played at Wembley, and it was still like pinching myself going, 6 months ago in France, you know, playing in a league where no one knows you, no one. Yeah. So then went to Australia after that.
Wow.
With Castleford. So just before we went to Australia, though, I had twin boys who came along pretty early, 26 weeks. So they were really early, and
that's a big challenge.
Yeah, and that was a challenge because I had to leave rugby for 4 months because we had to we were at Burnley Hospital actually first, and we moved over to Liverpool. Right. So we spent 4 months there. We lived there with the other children. They put us in a flat, and we went through absolute every emotion going, like, how, even now when I look back at how we came out of that, it was like, wow, really, really don't know how we coped with it, but we found a way. In the meantime, clubs were, Lee Jewitt's not playing, he's taking a wage, so do we want him? So while I had my lads in hospital, which they was not in the best, obviously not in they was in the best place, but as far as themselves, there was really poorly boys. Clubs were trying to ship me on as well. So like, what? Where's all this going to go? You know, like, where does it end? So they came out of hospital anyway, and then we moved to Australia. We wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't have done that the year after. I don't think it made us realise how life should be lived, kind of thing, you know, and how quickly it can change.
Almost that sense of priorities as well as
yeah, definitely.
Most important to you.
Yeah, and even now, you know, when people they prioritise and you look, and I always question it: are problems really problems these days? You know, can they be fixed? Yeah, well, let's fix them. Until you've obviously gone through probably the worst things, you don't see that. But that's why I work with children, trying to push that problem solving and then coping strategies. So yeah, we went to Australia. Townsville for a year, absolutely loved it. You know, again, when I look back, the kids have lived in Australia as well now, and so then we came back and Hull Kingston Rovers. We moved back to Wigan because the kids had moved around quite a bit, and it was time for them, let's settle them with their friends at school now. I don't want them to move to Hull and then back to Wigan because we were always going to go back to Wigan. Yeah. So I travelled up to Hull, which was about 2 hours a day. That's just there, and 2 hours back. Yeah. And played up at Hull, where it probably took its toll a little bit. I got a few concussions, a few too many head knocks. I weren't really recovering from them as good as I should have been. Like probably 10 years ago, and a bit younger, I would have recovered a lot more, a lot quicker. And as you pointed out with my face at the moment, I took a few bangs. So
just for listeners, before we started this, Ken did rudely point out that Lee's face looked like it had a few hits.
Yep. I'm not sure that's what I said. I apologise.
No, it's not probably not the first person. I'm sure you're probably the last person to say that.
So Lee, if it's okay for me to just kind of jump in a little bit, because I was just, as you were describing that, I was trying to plot that journey that you've been on, and kind of pick out, because obviously what we're really interested in exploring firstly is kind of the mental well-being things that people deal with because of the changes in life, etc. And then also how people cope with adversity and come through stronger people and potentially grow, and it can help shape them. So if it's okay, I think I'm going to pick out a few little bits from that and ask you to just talk about it a little bit maybe, because there was various times in life it felt like where you must have been quite a lot of pressure, and it'd be interesting to know if the support was there. Before we get into that then, for people like Ken, the uninitiated, who doesn't really understand rugby league and describes it as the poorer version of the proper game of rugby.
I'm not sure I said that either.
So, but I think in the north, is it fair to say rugby league it's our rugby game?
Yeah, straight up the M62 really, isn't it?
And those clubs that you just mentioned there are top end. You know,
Yeah,
they're the Super League teams. You know, the really kind of thing. So, talk a little bit, I suppose, about being a teenager and kind of thrust into that environment of working. You know, being in the environment of grown-up adults and being under the pressure to train and all that kind of stuff, and how good. I've done my long rambling question as I always do, so I'll ask this really succinctly. How good or not are the support mechanisms in place for kind of teenagers in that kind of sporting environment, would you say?
It's getting better.
Okay.
It's getting better. Definitely back, 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't anything that now, you know, with the way mental health's going and the big push for it, it's definitely getting better. Can it be better? Yeah. But in 10 years, if you ask me the same question, I'm going to say yeah. Probably because we need to keep improving on that. But yeah, it's definitely getting better. The big thing as a young kid was, especially within rugby league, is it education or is it sport?
Right.
And that's the big push at the moment from my side. Well, they can do both. At the moment, it's kind of like you're not giving 100% to your sport if you've got another hobby, if you like, or another.
And is that kind of coming back to yourself? Is that the reality for you back then? It was almost, well, if you're going to be a rugby player, you have to focus on that and forget everything else almost.
And as a young kid, obviously, if that's all you want to do anyway, that's what you've grown up. Not just rugby, you know, if you want to be a footballer, a golfer, if that's all you've ever wanted to do, you don't want to do anything else because your solely focus is there. So it's about having them and people around you, if you like, you know, pulling you in them other direction, saying, well, actually, will this make you a better athlete or will this make you a better person by possibly doing this as well?
Okay.
Which it does, which the proof's there that the best athletes, for instance, are the ones who've had a dual career, if you like. Like you can use Vincent Kompany, who he did business management at university whilst he was winning premierships. You know, he had that, it weren't just solely football. He had a life away from, and it's the same with rugby. You look at the more successful rugby players, they've definitely had something else going on away.
I think that what's really interesting there for me is 2 points. There's this kind of, this sense of balance is really good for the person as a whole, this sense of having multiple things going on in your life rather than a really strict focus just on one thing. But also this, I feel like this sense of having a support network around you, I'm guessing that starts with that family support network you talked about, your immediate family. And I wonder how that relates to at the other end of the spectrum. So you're, you know, one of the best playing at the highest level of a professional sport. What can we learn about people who are struggling to be active at all around those two things in terms of getting balance in your life and that support network and how important that is? I mean, do you think there are comparisons between the two there in terms of the importance of that support network for a pro athlete and the support and that support network around kids who are struggling to be active?
I'd definitely say there's support there. Does everyone know what support's there? Is a different answer. You get a different answer, you get a different question there. Definitely, but I do think if people can just, you know, a lot of people haven't done physical activity, if you like, they do it at school maybe, you know, once a week. So away from that, if their mates, for instance, aren't doing it, and obviously we know children, the kids, they love doing what the mates do. If they're not doing it, well, why should I want to go and hang around with my mates and do whatever my mates are doing? So it's about if they can look at it as a bit of fun and give it a go. That's the big, and it's that unknown, if you like. And I use it all the time. I always say it, and I say it to kids now, exactly the same thing in schools about why are you scared of the unknown if you don't know what's there? And they'll sit there and they'll look at me like, what do you mean? I said, well, you're telling me you don't like doing this subject or a certain sport, but you've never done it. So why don't you give it a go and then come back and tell me if you don't like it, fine, we'll move on and find something else. So at least just give it a go, but just for the mental well-being side of it as well, within that, it's proven that physical activity helps. You know, a lot of time de-stress and gives you a different focus. Exactly what you were saying about the focus side. You know, focus alongside, well, actually, I can still find time to do this with my mates, but I enjoy doing this as well. And then I've got my school that, you know, it all sits in nicely, especially with the balance of life.
Yeah, I mean, I've sidetracked slightly. I think you, Jamie, you had a couple more questions around.
Yes, I think
the rugby career first.
Because we do want to return to that kind of childhood physical activity thing, which you're doing a lot of work with now, which is an interest for TaAF as well. But I think, and just because when we were sat with Tim Pattenden, that's right, he's on the previous podcast, we talked about this example of it would be interesting to get a professional athlete and somebody not in employment and somebody in another realm of life into a room together and talk about the realities of stress.
Yeah.
Because you'd imagine that the person potentially doesn't have a job, doesn't understand why a pro athlete should be stressed, and a pro athlete might not understand why a teacher, you know what I mean? It's that reality of, it's interesting that stress affects everybody, no matter what. No matter what, you know, what level you're at, peak performance, how comfortable your financial situation is, what your family's life, it hits all of us. So just coming back to the fact that, you know, kind of you lived in this world, I think, when you were doing that outline of your story, you talked about a few times that I had to deal with somebody telling me I was not good enough.
Yeah.
I had to deal with rugby clubs saying that no one really wanted me.
Yeah.
I had to deal with the fact that people were trying to move me on. And this is all around a very professional career. I mean, a very successful career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So despite those things. So how did you, as a person in that situation, deal with that kind of, those knockbacks, those impacts to your confidence, which must have got you?
Yeah, well, the first thing I did was speak. That was the first thing. And with my wife, I spoke about, well, what's next? And at one point, like I said, there was no what's next because there was nothing there. So then it was a case of kind of...
Sorry to jump in, that must be scary, a little bit.
Yeah, of course it is. You know, and it's same with when you get to a certain point in your career and you need to move on. It's a similar thing. What's next? That identity kind of disappears, if you like. So at that point, it was a case of, okay, so what's next? And obviously, my wife was 2 steps in front of me, and I already thought, well, we're going to sell for France. You know, she'd already got that. So, but at the point, it's kind of, well, look, I've been doing this for this long. Yeah, one person doesn't really rate me, if you like, or like me as a person, which is fine, you know. And this is where it refers exactly back to the general public of, well, actually, if someone don't really like you, there's only 2 ways you can know that. You can either agree with them and then kind of do what they want, or you can actually prove that point of, well, for the last 10 years, I've worked my socks off to get where I am. So why don't I use the skills I've picked up along the way to push forward again? You know, rather than just say, okay, you're right, yeah, I'm done. And you know what? I could have done it. I'm not saying it was all glorious. You know, I could have easily said, that's me, I'm done. And you know what? I think I did at one point say, that could be me. And I'm pretty certain I did, but it was a case of, well, actually, just have a think, really, how far you've come and what's next. And probably that unknown of what's next. Well, there's nothing next. Well, make it then. You know, make something next.
You know, it's really interesting that, you know, that a couple of things you touched on there, the sense of, I've hit a point of, you know, dejected disappointment perhaps, and I've got 2 ways I can go. I can either kind of agree with it and that be it, or choose to take a more positive approach and say, well, what are my options now? I think that applies to all of us, that you can, you know, when life there's going to be challenges, setbacks, things that happen in your life that are not ideal or not what you want or hoped for. And there's an element of, you know, our happiness in life perhaps is more about what we choose, our choices, and how we choose to react to stuff rather than the circumstances that happen. And you know, you've explained loads of situations where you've found something arguably better, or that you've seen a real positive in taking the family to France or to Australia, and those have been really incredible experiences, even if not exactly what you planned for or hoped for at the time.
They weren't part of the plan. And the other side to it is, could they have gone drastically wrong? Yeah, definitely. And would I still be sat here saying, would I sit here and say I shouldn't have done it? No, I won't. Because would I be sat here now saying, if I wouldn't have done it, should I have done it? You know, so it was, at least I've done it. And you know what? They didn't work out. They didn't go how they were supposed to. If it would have worked out perfect, I'd probably still be in Australia now. You know, that's the honest truth. And so it didn't work out perfect. But do I look at, like you said, the negative of that as, I wanted to spend the rest of our life in Australia? Or do we go, well, actually look at the life the kids have had, even us, you know, as adults, of what we've gained and the experiences we've gained. So sometimes it's just about kind of giving yourself that minute of how far I've come and what's the experience, and just experiencing it is massive. And going back to, you know, if you had someone who different people in the room, you know, you've all got different experiences, you've all got different stresses, but yeah, I guarantee we put it on a board, we all could find something common there and work off it, definitely.
I suppose we could explore your career for the next 2 hours and be fascinated by it all. I'm keen to get on to the stuff you're doing now. Just a couple of things, I suppose, on rugby before we move on. If there was one thing you could say you've kind of learnt from your rugby career and being that professional player that could help, you know, regular, mere mortals like me, if there was one kind of thing that you feel like you've learned, what might... I'm putting you on the spot here, but what might that be?
No, definitely. Probably what I've already said with the adversity side of it. You know, you do get given, it's a choice. It's a choice, and look, you stand by your choices, and sometimes you have to reassess your choices. And should I reassess 4 or 5 mine? Yeah, definitely. Did I? No. Looking back now, though, do I look at if I've got 100 steps on a ladder and I'm at 90, do I look at the 10 I've not made, or do I look at the 90, the journey I've made to get to 90? I'd definitely look at the journey, not the 10 what's left. So as far as your question, it's definitely about looking where you are now, as opposed to actually I didn't play for England, I didn't get that final shove, but yet the last 20 years of a journey, no matter what you are in life, you know, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a head teacher, youth worker, school teacher, whatever you are, it's about looking at, well, look at the gains I've made to where I am now, rather than I didn't quite get that last hurdle, if you like. You
should have played for England, in our view.
Well,
we don't know anything about it, really.
I'll be honest, I don't understand rugby very much at all. But I'm going to confirm that Lee looks like the kind of specimen who should have played for England.
And that's the first as well. I've never been said that, so yeah.
So a couple of really quick points for me. I think the beautiful bit of that is adversity gives you a choice.
Of course it does.
You know, that thing naturally, well, now it's choice time again, and turn that into an opportunity. So I can choose to go that road or that road, but you've given me that choice. Now I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to take that pick. And I've just got this image, so apologies to Mrs. Jewitt if this isn't the case. I've got this image of your wife with the world map with like rugby league playing countries on it. Right, so if this doesn't work with Lee, where are we going to go next? Yeah. I fancy a bit of south of France. I fancy a bit of Australia.
Oh, you setting me up here, aren't you? Yeah, you setting me up.
No, I think one thing that came across definitely was that person who can support you throughout this, who when you come home going, what next? She's like, well, we'll work out what next, don't worry about it, we'll do it together. And the what next turned into those amazing opportunities.
And look, they're in a worse position. They're the ones who are sitting back, seeing how the husbands are coming home, seeing the pressures they're under, and can they do something about it? Well, yeah, only to a certain extent, but it's up to that person. So they're probably in fact they are in a worse position because they're going through everything, but they can't do anything about it.
There you go. There's a podcast in its own right.
Absolutely.
The family of the people going through these things. Awesome, wicked. Right, lovely. So I think we've covered that first theme, which we really wanted to do. So what we want to do now is mix it up a little bit and do something just a little bit of fun, where people get to learn a little bit more about you in a quite a random way. And this is called the P9 Quick Fire Questions. And ultimately what we'll do is ask you 9 questions quite quickly.
Yep.
Well, there'll be a timer on. Have we got the timer ready? Just to add a bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Don't worry about these questions, by the way. They're nothing kind of personal.
Right,
okay. Or nothing dodgy. But ultimately, it's to learn a little bit more about you in a bit of a fun way.
I love how we think a little timer's going to add some pressure to someone who's played at Wembley.
Yes.
Different pressures, this though. This is different kind of pressure.
That's it. He hasn't heard the timer yet. Come on.
Yeah. So, am I on questions?
Yes, Ken, you're on questions, and I will. So, if any of the answers are
worthy of a
pause to explain further, I'll stop it and go into it.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's quick fire. So let's go. First thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah, first thing. So, what's your nickname?
Jewitt.
Can live with that. Which Harry Potter?
Whoa. In all of your rugby play, I'm not having. You've only had one.
I've only had that one nickname. That is it. That's it.
Wow.
Nothing
You'd
else.
expect rugby players to crucify each other.
Oh, that's to my face. I don't know what this is about that. You know.
Fair enough.
All right, sorry. Carry on.
Which Harry Potter character are you most like?
I've never watched Harry Potter.
You've hurt our feelings now.
I've never watched Harry Potter. Sorry.
Okay. One thing that annoys you.
Oh. People who don't know the difference would believe rugby union.
Oh no, that's
Ken's
me.
in trouble.
One thing that makes your heart glad.
Is that happy?
Yes.
That means happy, yeah, my family.
Okay. How long does it take you to get ready in the morning?
5 minutes.
Run, walk, cycle, or something else?
Walk.
Qualifications or experience?
Experience.
If there's a spider in your house, do you kill it or set it free?
Neither. Get the wife to get it.
Oh, hang on a minute.
Neither.
What was that? I'm with you all the way, Lee.
Neither.
Now, is this because you're terrified?
I'm terrified.
Yes.
I love
I'm
that.
terrified, neither of them.
I love it, see. It doesn't matter if you're a rugby league buff guy or a non-rugby league buff guy like me.
No, terrified.
Spiders are terrifying.
Spiders are spiders.
Don't
Yeah,
deal
that's
with
it,
them.
yeah.
I agree with
And
you.
he's lived in Australia, to be fair, and I bet you've
Yeah.
seen some spiders there.
Yeah, and I didn't deal with them either.
Right, we've got one question left. How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to Mariah Carey?
1.
One. Even with them beautiful dulcet northern tones.
Yeah, definitely.
Karaoke's not your thing?
Well, I've only done it once. That says it all, doesn't it? I've only
What
done it
song?
once. Living on a Prayer.
Oh, there you go. We went full on rocking Bon Jovi, huh? Fair dues.
That's all in for your one attempt on karaoke.
I know, but I thought other people might have,
You
joined
joined
in.
it.
Yeah.
Just hung you out to dry.
Yeah.
Everyone, please don't do Bon Jovi. It's going to be awesome.
Was that with guys from the club or?
Oh, that was the wife.
Oh, right. Fair enough.
Excuse me, sorry.
Are we asking our extra question?
Always ask the extra question, even to somebody who doesn't know us, because it's not fair.
It's a bit unfair.
Okay.
Last question. Jamie or Ken?
Is that Ant or Deck? Is that what you mean? Ant or Deck? Okay.
You can't remember which one.
I can't remember which one, so I'm just going to throw a guess in here and go. Who said they were Deck?
Oh, that was
That-
you.
that's-
I'll go with Deck.
Oh, devastated.
Good man. That's
Sorry
2-1
about
to me now.
That is 2-1.
At least 2-1,
Very
probably
upset
more.
by that. Right, there we go. So we got to learn a little bit about Lee. The main take home being that he's terrified of spiders, despite him being the physical specimen that he is, and that his wife hung him out to dry when he last sang karaoke.
That's it.
Okie dokie, fab. So we're going to move into now our second kind of theme, if you like, which we started to touch on a little bit earlier. And I know it's something that you're quite passionate about, because it's an area you've got into now. So that's all around the theme of children and well-being and mindsets, and a particular link to physical activity for us. So I think if it's okay for you to just tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and probably how you got into that work from where you were as a kind of rugby player.
Yeah, so I got into it by, similar to what I was saying earlier, about how, well, I tell you what, how I got into it was, when I was in the changing rooms, there were lads being sick in a bin before a game, there's lads going to sleep, lads eating sweets, lads having a laugh, some lads just sat there, and I was the one who just sat there, and we're all going out doing the same job, but yeah, we're all reacting so differently right now. In 20 minutes we're going out doing exactly the same thing. So that led me on to, well, do people really, to different challenges in life, even though like you can use school as a perfect one, an English test for instance, maths test, people react different. It's not like one blanket for everyone, one shoe fits all. So that led me on to the psychology side of it and the mindset and basically why we behave like we behave. So within the mindset, when I go into schools now, we go in and I work with the children on highlighting that, you won't think the same as your friend at side of you and vice versa and around the class. So it's about kind of normalising situations and the emotions and feelings, what come with them, normalising them, because a lot of what I've found a lot of the time is anger will come out a lot at school with school children, anger, and yet they think it's not okay to be angry. So it's kind of saying, well, yeah, it's okay to be angry, it's just how we deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's what's led me into, especially with the children, with the resilience, and as I stated, I feel like it's just dripping away a little bit for whatever reason that is. But as far as from my career to the transition, if you like, it's about, well, actually, when I said about the experience, I've got a different experience to how people who've come from university, for instance, all the way. I've got a completely different experience, so let's use that and let's give them as many tools as they can. It's up to them if they use them. We can't make them use them, but let's give it to them.
So a little bit about kind of jumping back a sec. Is it fair to say that your background is kind of quite working class, kind of starting with not very much other than family and just working your way through that kind of thing?
Yeah, just
kind of having to work your way, earn things for yourself and that kind of stuff.
Of course, and am I happy with that way? Yeah, definitely. I look at my family now. Not my wife and children. My extended family, and you've had to a lot of my grandma and granddad. They've had to work for everything. But the people they are today are the phenomenal people. And it's kind of that working what's give you them experiences and them, especially them overcoming the obstacles what are thrown at you.
And I think that is that bit, isn't it? It's particularly for kind of Pennine Lancashire, where we're generally kind of a working class kind of area, and people have to really go out and earn things. It's people like yourself are just much more relatable. Yeah. You can say, well, this is my story, and it can sound like your story, and this is how I came through that kind of thing. So, what I'm interested in, just to help me a little bit, is so explain to me what CBT I think means in that kind of school environment, and what a typical interaction is between you and a group of kids or a class.
So the first thing I always say when I go in is, especially to the teacher introducing us, is we don't use CBT and we don't use counselling, and that's just because probably like the mental health side, there's that stigma to it, especially with children, who don't really know you. So I always say mindset coach, and they seem to, it just sounds a lot more relaxed to them than counsellors here, or your CBT therapist, or even ex-athlete. I don't like using that. I just think let's get away from that and use mindset coach. And so first thing I'll do is I'll go in and if the children, after a couple of weeks, what I find is you get the one-to-ones. They want to speak to you. They'll say things, obviously what they want to speak to you about aware, but a lot of the group sessions are problem solving, resilience, coping strategies, controlling the controllable, which again is massive. And even when we've been with the NHS, I've been with the NHS a little bit, and that's a similar thing. It's controlling the controllable, which again I feel like gets dismissed quite a bit. And effort, which is the main point of why we're with them children. You've got to put the effort in. But what you find, even with adults, you find, but I don't know how to put the effort in. Okay, well, let's map it out. Let's go through it slowly. So that's basically what we're going with the schools with, and that fits nicely with the emotions and the feelings, and it all sits in nicely. So I go in as a mindset coach.
I think that's really interesting. Just one phrase you said there. How do I put the effort in? There's something pretty. It's really interesting, inspiring, thought-provoking. Of we kind of perhaps live in a world, and my mindset until right now is just try harder, like. But it's really interesting way to look at it. Of how do I, even if I want to try, how do I put effort in?
Well, there's a saying, isn't there, what's quite familiar, and it's they're just a natural. She's just a natural. He's just a natural, and yet when you break that down, it's actually undermining. Well, actually, how much effort has it taken? We weren't born. We were born with kind of different personality traits and and different genes, but yet people have still had to work to get where they are. They've had to put the effort in. Now, when someone breaks that down and says, "Oh, he's just a natural," or "She's just a natural," actually, well, let's stop there and let's have a look at the journey I've come on to get where I am now. And that's again, I use that with the children a lot. Of the effort gets dismissed quite a bit, and if they're revising for a test and they get 100 out of 100, you're naturally good at maths. Well, actually, no, I've just spent the last 6 hours revising at home.
Because I've got a kind of 7-year-old daughter, and it is the kind of thing you're just naturally good at that kind of thing. That person's naturally good, and like you say, it either undermines the child a little bit, it undermines the parent and the families who are doing the most to try and support that kind of thing.
It's kind of praising the effort.
It is an intriguing thought to say, should that word exist in that context at all?
Yeah, look, it means
is everybody ever just really natural, or is anything always about hard work, opportunity? Yes, right people around you. It's all input.
But that's a perfect scenario, isn't it? You look at that's if everyone had that, it'd be brilliant. You know, it doesn't work like we know life don't work like that. So it's about, you know, the effort. I just feel like that gets dismissed quite a bit.
And I think what the thought that was prompted in my mind was like, I think I'm a relatively hard-working person. Maybe not relatively.
Sorry, just let me have a coughing fit right now, Ken, as you just said that. Sorry.
I feel like I work quite hard in various different portions of my life. Yeah. What's interesting is, you know, I think I can visualise what it takes to be really good at physical activity or a sport.
Yeah.
And I want to be more physically active. Yeah. But I don't put any effort into it, and I don't know quite how to. It was just that phrase that you used of how do you, when you want to do something.
I don't know how to.
You know, and you're
it's like a motivation, isn't it?
Yeah, and you've been in the middle of a rugby career, perhaps, and I'm sure there were days where you had to go to training, and you, well, maybe you never, but I'm guessing there were days where you didn't want to.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
How do you? And I suppose that's the same for us at work, that we get up and we turn up for work even though we don't want to.
Yeah.
But we don't have to run into other guys who are 16, 17, 18 stone going at 30 mile an hour trying to you know.
Yeah.
How do you get yourself kind of in that space where I'm putting in hard physical effort even when perhaps mindset wise I'm not in that space?
That's where that resilience sits in, and at the same time it's where you can use how does it look right now? Well, okay, I don't want to go to work, okay, but then how does it look in an hour, 2 hours where I feel a bit not so good because I've not gone to work. Okay, how does it look in 7 hours when my day is done and I feel okay? That it answers a lot of questions. That it's kind of that start, middle and end, and putting it into practicing. How does it look? How does it look for you right now? You know, and look, people don't want to go to training. People don't want to go to work. You know, people
kids don't want to go to after school club. Whatever.
Of course,
whatever
and that's like, you know, some love it, some don't. That's life, and at least try it. That's my, you know, just if we can try it, we don't realise what we like, you know, to a certain extent. And you know what, the amount of the adults and children who have passed through and done something in this day and age and gone, I didn't think I like doing that, but you know what, it wasn't too bad. That's a massive win, whether they do it again or not. But yeah, it's tick that box that actually I can do other things what really I'm not so keen on, but I enjoy it.
In the sense of give it a try and then think about how you feel afterwards, not trying to predict how you will feel in the future.
Yeah, that's the big and predicting.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of things we kind of mentioned, and actually again referring back to a previous podcast, a lot of the visualisation, you talked about, you know, you could get people together and put it up on a board and you'll find commonalities, or you can ask people to think about it and what does it look like in the future.
Yeah.
I know professional athletes use that quite a lot, don't they? The visualisation of what the end goal is and the journey to get there, so it feels more familiar. I think that is something that you don't see very often in professional environments. You probably don't see often in kind of, you know, or you see see very much at the moment, potentially in school environments, is that getting things out of your head.
Yeah, and putting it up there.
Putting it up there to look at and to share and to discuss.
Even
there's an awful lot that can just help with.
And I do it with the children at the moment. I'll get them to sit down, and because again, it's okay. Everyone's journey is different as well. So by mapping that one on the board, if you like, you're gonna have maybe half people sat there going, well, actually, my journey's completely different. So it's about actually map your own journey. There's no right or wrong here. Let's map it and let's see where we end up. And it takes over time, but how does it look now, basically, and how does it look in a year's time? How do you want it to look, should I say? How do you want it to look in a year's time? And that's when the answers start going, well, I want it to look like this, okay. So if you want it to look like that, then what do you think to putting the effort in doing this, and this to give yourself that chance? Yeah, I suppose you get a point, and that's where obviously the effort links into the visualisation.
Yeah, and that sense of perspective. And it's all really interesting. We touched on that with Tim a little bit a few weeks ago, and he talked about, we didn't really get into it, but he talked about vision boards and affirmation statements at the moment. It took him 2 hours to get ready every morning because we don't know what he was doing, but and so it's really interesting. The other thing just to pick up on, which I found really interesting when you're describing what you do with the kids at school, is this sense of language being really important. And I don't want to be a CBT therapist or a professional athlete, and actually communicating with people in a way that kind of takes normalises it and makes it more acceptable and approachable and more relaxed and informal. I think there's something in that about the way we talk about exercise and sport and let's go to the gym, and a lot of the language that we use around physical activity for both kids and for adults is it in and of itself is a bit of a barrier.
I think so, yeah. Physical activity is going out for a walk. That's part, and some people don't. They might sit in a car and go home and sit in, but actually, just going for a walk, and even the walk, the side of it is, physical activity, brilliant, but appreciating when you went for that walk. And again, I never really appreciate it till even just the treat, just everything about it, appreciating, and then even if it's for 5 minutes, coming back and then assessing, well, actually, how do I feel? It's that de-stress as well. So when people say the gym and the sports, actually, let's break it down. It doesn't have to be any of that. It could just be going for a walk, once or twice a week first, seeing how you feel, how your week looks then, and then slowly, eventually you might go for a walk every night, but from where you've come from to where you are now, that's a massive gain.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to be intrigued now to see if there's a common theme that comes up when we have guests who kind of care about this stuff as much as yourself and kind of Tim having stuff is. So you just mentioned there on that kind of walk. So firstly, doing that first easy step, whatever it could be, just taking and going for a walk. But then what you talk about then is, but then appreciating on the 5 minutes and being really present in that walk and just being part of it and being present in that 5 minute walk, and then coming back and reflecting how you feel after that 5 minute walk. And something came up similar last time of being present in that moment and then reflecting about the experience that you've just had and recognising how you feel about it.
Yeah, and it's that word recognising, I think. Recognising, actually, I feel better for having done that. And therefore, and the next step is, and therefore, so I should do it again. Rather than, I went for a walk, and that was lovely. And, it doesn't make sense to then say, I'm never going to do that anymore. That was nice and it was lovely. I appreciated the walk, I liked the fresh air. Trees were beautiful, birds were singing. I come home, I feel relaxed and great. No one then says, and so therefore I'm never going to do that again.
That's as good as it gets on a walk. I will never try that walk again.
And it's that reflective and recognising, actually, I feel pretty good about it.
And maybe the reflecting bit is a massive thing that people don't naturally do. That if we all did a bit more, could help you create the positive memory rather than it diminishes in time, if that makes sense. So you reinforce that positive memory of the experience to make it more likely in a week's time you'll remember, or 2 days' time, as opposed to it fades and then the walk is forgotten, if you like.
But then it drops back to, have people been given these tools rather than, like you said, the running, the sports, the gym? Yeah, everyone gets given them, they're there. But have they been given them tools, which some people won't even class that as exercise, but yet for someone who doesn't do it, that could be a massive step, whether it's for the health, mental health, so they're them tools what need to be given as well.
Those psychological tools.
Yeah.
So, again, trying to get into this, we talked a little bit around some of the tools. So, wanting to try to help, teachers, for example, or even parents who can support children with some of these tools that people like yourself are kind of trying to start to kind of raise the awareness of and things. Again, bringing it back to what can we help them with and what can they take away? As a kind of first step with supporting children to maybe, to deal with emotions better or to deal with adversity or to take that first step into the unknown, what would you kind of suggest is a really good way to support children in that regard?
Yeah, well, first thing, everyone's got to be on the same sheet. So if you're speaking to a child about problem solving and then they're going back to the class, to the same environment, to the same issues, it's kind of countering it. It's a similar thing with going on, and by no means you're telling people how to parent, because everyone's different, everyone's unique, parents different, teachers are different. But it's about, well, actually, how can we bring all this together? Because the end product to this, the end goal is the child to live a healthier life, regardless, which rubs off on the parents, a lot of the time, it can have a reverse effect. Rather than the adults rubbing off on their children, it's the children rubbing off on the adults. So it's about all coming together and actually let's work off the same sheet, rather than actually you go and do your thing with such a body, but I'm going to stick to my old ways. Well, we're countering this. Let's, and when it comes to the tools, no one's a miracle worker. It's like a joiner. He can take his tools, he can go and fix it if he wants to use them tools. And it's same for children, same for adults. If they choose to dismiss them tools, then it's tough. Yeah, but by kind of washing your hands and walking away, though, I think that's the wrong thing to do as well. Because a lot of time it's about the fear of, I don't know how to use these tools. I've never used them before. I don't want to do this because my home life's different to how you're explaining it. My school life, I don't really get along with my teacher, which is obviously a common theme as well. With such a teacher, okay, well, let's start with you then. How can we make things a lot easier for you? Let's break everything down, and then when you go back to class, rather than going around in that, and again, this is a book what I refer to, Pig Wrestling. I don't know if you ever come across it. Absolutely brilliant book. It's about reframing things. So when you said about the gym, people who do these 12-week challenges, if you like, they've got two frames, haven't they? They've got one on the first week and then one on the 12th week. They want to reframe themselves physically. Yeah. Okay, well, how do we reframe ourselves mentally? Let's do exactly the same. Let's see how it looks now and how we want us to look in the next 12 weeks, 6 weeks.
I think that example around tools that you used around a carpenter is really, really interesting. So when we talk about these psychological tools like reflection, and we've mentioned, and creating a vision and perspective, or whatever these tools might be, even if we were to kind of educate kids with all those things, if that was a one-off little session and off they go, it's like giving to me a saw and a plane and a power saw, and here's some wood, go on, this is how you build a table, go on, and all of a sudden I'm not going to chop my hand off. Well, no, I probably would. And so it's a really good example of just, you do a seminar, you teach people some tools, that's great. Yeah. So I now know what the hammer is, but I still don't know how to use it. I'm not proficient with it. Same with a sport. I've shown you how to pass a rugby ball. That don't mean you can go and play for Salford Reds in the Super League. Yeah. It's practice, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
You've got to provide opportunities for kids and then adults to practice these skills in a way that they're supported, so eventually they'll become good at them. But I guess we're probably, as a society, right at the start of, we're not even teaching people about the tools, never mind helping them to practice.
And it's easy to get rid of them tools if they don't work first time. That's a common theme as well, rather than, well, actually, let's stick with it. Again, I don't know how to stick with it. This is what you guys are here for, this is what I'm here for. Well, let's show you how we stick with it. Let's look at the journey, what that brings.
And I think coming back to something that we need to wrestle with in Together an Active Future in a good way is, how do we do this so it's sustainable, so it's long lasting? So having people like Lee going into schools is fantastic and is a massive big step forwards. But it's how you then also support those teachers and parents to carry on that journey when you've moved on to a new school and left them. So it's how do we support the teachers, the parents, the other people in all young people's lives to carry on that journey with those tools and with that support.
Well, when you first go to a school, it's like when the New Zealand All Blacks use this similar thing in rugby union, is the guy who they've got that shirt off, who's passed that shirt down, they want to leave that in a better place than when they got it. So it's similar with the schools. You go in here and you want to leave that school in a better place than when you first went in it. So what does that take? Well, each school's different. So that's what I say about off the same sheet. You get the teachers, everyone buys into it, and look, if it don't work, plan B, plan C, plan D, whatever that is. But let's all buy into it, and I'll give it a go, and then see how it looks. So it's about leaving it in a better place. And you know what? It's the marginal gains what people don't see, but yet they'll feel it in the environment of your business, whether you're a school. They feel the difference.
And you mentioned those marginal gains a few times, which is a very kind of pro-athlete, elite sports. It's used in that field a lot. Dave Brailsford with his cycling and these marginal gains. But you're right that it applies to all of this work that we're doing to support communities and make places better. You're not going to suddenly just be able to click your fingers and it all be totally different. It's on the margins, these marginal 1% gains here and there. And like you mentioned before we started the podcast today, a kid who's struggling he's coming into school and punching the locker 10 times a week and taking out his frustration in that way. If that goes from 10 to 8 or to 7, it would be wrong of us to be seeing, this kid's punching the locker 7 times a week, but actually he's moving in the right direction, and we've got to try and start to recognise those minor improvements in mental health and physical activity. And I can't run a marathon tomorrow, but I might be able to run 20 minutes and the next day 25 minutes, and just slowly.
Yeah.
You got to take things in small steps.
20 minutes more than what you did yesterday, so it's like
it's 20 minutes more than I've done all year, mate.
Well, there you go. So it's 20 minutes more you do. Yeah, so that's it. You either look at, well, I can't run 30 minutes, or well, I've not run 20 minutes all year, but I have done. You know, it's
absolutely.
about looking at the positive rather than always the negative. And as society comes, is it easier? And again, we do this with the children. Is it easier to name a negative about yourself or someone? Yeah. Now you ask someone to name a positive about themselves, they find it difficult.
Yeah,
they really find it difficult.
Jamie doesn't.
Well,
he could list 100.
Sorry, most people.
There are no negatives, so it makes it very easy. So I think just kind of bringing it to a close a little bit, and again, not to put you on the spot a little bit, but because I'm always mindful these chats that we get into, quite rightly, are focused on, this is a long journey of this stuff, and there's some really big challenges here, but I'm always keen to look for, but we are doing it and we are having successes, and things are better than they have been because of these chats and this work. And obviously not going into kind of details, but is there kind of an example of a particular young person you work with or supported that kind of sticks in your mind a little bit and makes you realise, this is why I wanted to do this work?
Yeah, obviously we had one child who couldn't even give eye contact. And again, as far as the school, that didn't tick, if you like, the Ofsted boxes, that side of it, if you like, but couldn't even give eye contact. And then by, I think, 3, 4, 5 week in, looking, speaking, and that's when I was like, the teacher going, these are massive gains, absolute massive gains. And now I'm with the same school, we're 12 week in, and they've started, the teachers have jumped on board and started to say, yes, yeah, we can see a difference. So they're the subtle things, again, that would have just kind of gone unmissed a little bit, but just the eye contact. So, and they're the things when they start, just coming out of the shell, if you like, a little bit, it's like, yes, that's what you want, let's see the real you, if you like, what's hiding away in there, and then let's, until they start obviously swinging on ceilings, and then the real you comes out, but it's a little bit different. But
we celebrate that as well.
We celebrate that as well. Yeah, it's a massive game. Yeah, so just it's the really subtle things.
I think that's beautiful, isn't it? It's, if any of us are in a position where you've changed one person's life for the benefit, then that's something to rejoice in. If you can do it multiple times over, all the better. And me and you, I remember a long time ago at the start of this journey, was work with one person, see what you can do, and if something works there, then actually you can start to kind of really, grow that a little bit. And that example of one person that makes a difference in their school start going along on. Yeah, maybe we can get behind this. That's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. Right, so marvellous. Thank you very much, Lee. We are going to review the success factors that we called out at the start.
Yeah.
And we won't give ourselves marks out of 10 because we've never done that before. I don't know why I was about to go there.
We could.
No, let's not. Because if it's not 10 out of 10, the guest leaves like that. And then we'll say, hang on, you said that you should be looking at the 9 you got, not the 10. So I think you said, talk about raising the awareness of the commonality between kind of professional athletes and sports and real life. And I think the first half, there was lots of examples that came up with that, I remember rightly. Do we agree?
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
Marvellous. Then we talked about having some of the tools for the emotions. Yeah. And I think we just covered some very specific tools then. Yeah. And quite interestingly, a lot of the ones that have come up in the previous conversation, which is just starting to kind of really cement some of these things as things that people could start to use going forwards. And the ability for people to overcome adversity, and just talk a bit about that. And I think your specific example at the end of those children who, that kind of eye contact and kind of moving them on, I think we achieved that as well. Yeah. So, I think we smashed the success factors.
We've really enjoyed having you with us this afternoon. It's been great to get to know you a little bit more. And
so, mindful that you have a website.
Yes.
Do you remember the name of it?
Yes.
Go on.
Lee Jewitt Sports Counselling and Welfare.
Well, there you go. I'm not surprised you don't remember it.
No, I don't remember that.
But I imagine if you Google Lee Jewitt, you'll probably find there. So do check that out. You're also on Twitter.
Yeah, Lee Jewitt Sports Counselling.
There you go, Lee Jewitt. So have a look at what Lee's doing on there. and Google him 'cause he's a super interesting person. He's particularly handsome if the ladies or men want to kind of check that out too. Have a Google away and see what you can find out.
He's the best looking podcast we've had so far, no offence to Tim, but or any of the others, but
oh dear, Tim's right now feeling not as good about himself.
I'm trying to recover myself from saying looks like his bit it's in the face too.
I'm uncomfortable.
Good, take that off. We've made him uncomfortable.
Yes, we made him uncomfortable. That was our success factor. So brilliant. So what I'll do now, I'll just kind of wrap up, and then we'll hand over to Lee for the kind of final word of whatever you would like to say. So thank you as always for spending time with us. If you thought this podcast was any good, it would be awesome if you could tell people about it, share the link, share the love, and click to subscribe to future podcasts. If you want to do even more than that, maybe tell us how great we were or how awesome a guest Lee was, then please do so and find us on Twitter at TaAF Talks and tweet away. So thank you once again for listening to me and to Ken and Lee, and I will hand over to Lee for the final thought.
So I had a man back when I was young called Dean Bell, and he gave me a couple of phrases really on how to what he thought was the quotes to succeed, and he said to me, never forget hard work makes dreams come true, and then quickly enjoy the journey with that, because sometimes you might not get that end product, but it's enjoying the journey, and don't be scared to fail, it's just a process.